Welcome to the Report, where we watch talk about every episode of the Colbert Report from 2005 to 2014. That's a lot of episodes. I'm Alex.
And I'm Nathaniel.
Colbert's guest is Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is not the crazy Tyson. There was one time later on, and they had an SNL joke where one of the Fox and Friends hosts mixed up Neil deGrasse Tyson and Mike Tyson. Said,
Okay.
"Didn't you bite off Evander Holyfield's ear that one time?" And they talk about Fox and Friends later in the episode, so it's an interesting coincidence, I guess.
Fun coincidence.
And he talks about the full-on Wi-Fi. He talks about the Airport Extreme, which was the name of like Apple's like premium wireless router thing.
He also says he's going to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson about Escape from Planet of the Apes.
That was in the previous segment, I think.
Yeah.
In like the introduction. And so he said, and of course, it just like this just leads into a whole joke about tech support and outsourcing for whatever reason. He aims it at Lou Dobbs, although I'm not sure if that was I'm not sure if that's what motivated it entirely, or was it just...
I think it's because it was in the news, and Lou Dobbs is famous for talking about outsourcing, and he happened to have him on the show, so it's a good callback.
Yeah. But of course, Colbert is proud that they put his call through to India, and he says it must be because he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
And he likes to live with the exotic. It seems like they do make a lot of jokes about like Indian tech support people referring to themselves with English names. I assume it must have actually happened, but...
Is that not a thing they do anymore?
I mean, maybe they probably do, I guess. Like, I assume the idea was less to trick people, more just so they could pronounce their names maybe in some kind of attempt, but...
Okay.
I'm not sure, but... of course, he brings back the heroes thing again, and he says that the guy sounded like Ben Kingsley, so he just uses a picture of Ben Kingsley to represent him.
And he, apparently the tech support guy referred to him as Mr. Colbert.
Yeah. I think the first time he made a joke about that so far.
Yeah.
And Colbert thinks that he's Scottish.
Yeah, because he's... Well, on the fake recording, he thinks he's Scottish, because...
And Kevin says he's from Nebraska. Talks about a floppy disk because he wanted to look up a floppy... I do remember them being on the way out by then already, but...
Yeah, well, the question was if... Because Colbert, the character in the phone call, mentions he wants him to just fix his floppy disk, in a typical, like, not tech-wise rant.
Yeah.
And my question was wondering if at that time, if floppy disks were considered, like, old technology and it would have been a funny thing to ask for help with, or if it would have still been relevant technologies, just the tone would have been the joke there.
It says supported, but at least Wikipedia's thing claims that by 2007, only 2% of computers had floppy disk drives, but...
So likely at that time it was...
I mean, it's probably already out of date.
It was probably out of date, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, he says they're just suing the American dream in India.
Yeah.
Then he also claims that Sanjeet didn't know about tech, which is...
Sanjeet's the actual name of the tech guy. But it's a funny segment.
Yeah. And so then we get onto the word, which is perspective. This is about 2,000 fatalities in Iraq, which had just happened the other night. So, yeah, it does seem like I'm got to be sure that the word must be something they only take one day to write. And this is Fox Fred says, as opposed to the last one, which is just making something up, this is like what I feel he usually does, where he takes like another news thing and like makes fun of their takes on it.
Yeah, so Colbert watches the Fox and Friends talk about 2,000 casualties in Iraq.
Yeah. I mean, Brian Kilmeade and Steve Doocy are still there, even though I think it was like almost like 25. I think it's been like 25 years since they started it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the general...
but like it seems like the woman has changed. So.
The general perspective... Well, they're talking about on Fox, and the opinion that the character is echoing is that really 2,000 isn't that much, because I guess it's like it's not a really great argument, but that's the argument that Colbert makes. He makes jokes about it too.
Yeah.
He also references Antietam.
Yes, 23,500 at Antietam is pretty close to the accepted death toll, and since the battle only took one day,
that's a lot more
considered
than
Yeah.
So, but
and that's still the high score, he says. And he says that was for a just cause, and then of course, as one of them was.
Yeah.
And of course, like I mean, like the whole thing with the South is they did say that their cause was just, even if they lost. But
yep.
And so I looked up the thing is like he says that it was worth it because any of the examples he cites of Middle Eastern democracy, they seem a bit weird because all of them were like from a bit earlier in the year, like they weren't even like ongoing. Like the Lebanon one was that after
what does he say happens in Lebanon again?
So like here's what happened is like it seems like the after the Civil War, the troops from Syria were in the north and Israel were in the south along the borders. Israel was left in
Mm,
2000s, but the Syrian ones are still there. And, like the ex prime minister was assassinated, and a lot of people blamed the Syrians, so it led to a big protest.
mm,
And eventually, Syria did pull out, and they got a new prime minister, I think.
okay. So the Syria just pulled out, and that was the big deal.
Yeah, but that
What?
was in April, so.
Yeah. What are they talking about with Lebanon and the Gaza Strip?
And the Gaza Strip thing was that in Gaza they had like elections after Israel withdrew from there,
Mm,
and Hamas wound up winning them, which did lead to more fighting and eventually.
okay. So the other
And the other one is
democratizing.
Egypt, which is that like somebody challenged Hosni Mubarak in a vote in September, in an election in September for the first time in a while. I mean, didn't get that much, but I guess it was.
What happened to
That
him?
was
Is he still alive?
I don't know. I mean, and one of the things that's kind of funny is the only living former leader of Egypt was Fuad II, who became king when he was a baby. So,
And when was that? When did he become king?
like in the 1950s,
Okay, so they don't have a great track record.
I guess.
Who's the current leader of Egypt?
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Fatal Sisi. Okay.
And of course, he says like maybe we'll get Saudi women driving soon, but I mean that one did not come true because it would take until June 2018 for that to happen. So,
Yep.
and then like Colbert said, I get 200,000 deaths for that Saudi women driving, and a cool million if Al Qaeda and
Yeah.
WMDs are involved.
Yeah. And how many deaths were there total in the second Gulf War?
In Iraq, it says 4,431 would be the total.
So this was about half. When
Yeah,
were? Why did the rate of casualties slow down so
I
much?
mean because we'd had. I mean, like imagine most of them were just in toppling the soldiers the first time around,
Okay.
and so I imagine they just slowly built up later. But
So is that the general like way fatalities work for most wars?
I'm
Is that
not sure. I
they
said I don't know. I didn't actually look.
you didn't? Okay.
And so then like Colbert says that like you should definitely be optimistic because and then talks about how like the New York Times and Washington Post are spinning it by calling it like a grim event or
Yep.
whatever. But then he says even Fox and Friends aren't going too far because their banner says it's a sad milestone. And then it says it doesn't even count because 436 of the deaths were not in combat.
So it's
And if
just
the war
accident.
was a mistake, every death is an accident.
So technically no fatalities.
I guess. And so now we get Neil deGrasse Tyson on. This
Hmm.
is first non-white guest, first physicist who, as he points out, a thing. And I feel like this is the first guest that somebody Nathaniel's age would have definitely heard of
Yeah,
nowadays.
I think most people know who Neil deGrasse Tyson
Yeah,
is.
in terms of people I'd recognize, I think Jim Cramer would have been the first, but I
Yep.
don't. Not even though he's still
Um,
there, I'm not sure how.
and
And I know I can remember the one time was that way later on when they had Bill Gates as a guest, the like commercial just said Bill Gates, you know who he is.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Um,
And so the question that Colbert asked Neil deGrasse Tyson is, why is there something? 10 words or less.
yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a recurring guest, right?
Yeah, as I'm pretty sure he comes back a lot, like at least 6 times.
Mhm.
So
This is probably for Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is probably a more fun interview than he usually gets to
yeah,
do
he's also at the end. So he's also in the finale.
in the
So
finale episode.
yeah, with a whole bunch of other people.
All right.
I'm pretty sure he is. I mean, it would be weird if he was. And he was also, and then according to Neil deGrasse Tyson points out, there's actually a whole lot of nothing in the universe, and it's more about studying that.
Mm,
And Colbert said it's like jazz; it's the notes they don't play.
yeah.
He says, Colbert says, "Big Bang, take us through it."
And Colbert also generally asks Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain this very briefly, like
Yeah,
10 words or less.
yeah,
This is a parameter, which is
that was for
funny.
the first try.
Yeah.
But then Colbert says, "Well, your thing makes sense, but it makes my brain hurt. Why
Yeah.
did intelligent design is easier? The only option is that God must have snapped things into existence."
Yep.
And he calls Big Bang the marketing term, and I think Fred Hoyle coined the term. Might have actually been somewhat skeptical of the hypothesis when he coined it, but
The Big Bang's caught on. Is there any skepticism in the Big Bang itself, like the actual theory?
probably.
Like,
But
do scientists not like the name because they think
to
it's
be fair,
misleading? Or
I mean, it might be because I mean it's hard to tell how. There's this general point. The general idea is that the universe started from a single point and that it expanded, which doesn't seem like there's been any evidence against that. So
Hmm. Now, with the Big Bang, why did it grow so fast in that one moment it's grown slower
I don't
since?
think we know, but
Is it like an exponential growth thing, or
I'm not sure. I mean, the thing is that it is that I know the big surprising finding from 20 years ago, or whatever, is that the expansion is getting us slightly faster. So
so would that hamper the Big Bang theory or no?
no, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It just needs to explain how that's possible.
Okay. Do we have an explanation for how that's possible
Not
yet?
really. I mean,
Not
that's why they
really.
call it dark energy. But
Oh, because it's like it's
yeah,
that's the energy pushing the universe out.
I guess
All right.
I think so. I mean, these are just and Colbert also says that intelligent design is a classier term than Big Bang,
Yeah.
but and Neil deGrasse Tyson calls it intellectually lazy. But
Hmm.
then Colbert says, "You're saying that these gears can just plop together and make a transmission out of nowhere."
Yeah.
And um, but then of course Neil deGrasse Tyson says there's a lot of stupid things in the universe.
Yeah. Like meteors, which actually
Yeah,
he brought up a meteor that will almost
don't I'm not sure if you need to say it because do you want people to
almost
know when you're
hit. It doesn't matter.
yeah
Almost hit the Earth. Uh,
in 2029 it's Apophis.
well,
Yeah,
it's about to hit. It might hit the Earth in 2029, but it got very close in 2005.
yeah,
So it's Neil deGrasse Tyson brought it up as an example of an unintelligent part of the universe.
yeah. But then Colbert's thing is like maybe it's the smartest thing. He just wants us to start over with dolphins.
Yeah, maybe God's just happy with this. Is the
Yeah, and of course he's
fair
angry, and
comment
of course
response?
Colbert's angry at Neil deGrasse Tyson for wanting Pluto to not be a planet.
Yeah.
I mean, by this point they had not made the official decision yet, so
When did they make the official
it was
decision?
sometime in 2006. I don't remember.
2006.
Yeah, of
Was Neil
course.
deGrasse Tyson one of the people most like prominently campaigning for?
I mean, he was the whole thing that was blamed for making it some of the attention because when he redesigned the Hayden Planetarium, he decided to not have Pluto alongside the rest of the planets because he was skeptical of it being
Mm.
a full planet because they discovered the Kuiper Belt, which made it seem like there would probably be objects of similar size out there.
So it is his fault, basically.
Yeah,
I mean, Pluto's like the only planet that's a dog, so I think it's the most fun of all the
maybe.
planets.
And of course, going into the old like mnemonics of the my very whatever mother just said to us died pizzas or whatever.
Yeah,
Just sat upon nine porcupines is the one he used.
yeah. Well, the one I always heard was my what is it? My very something mother. My very something with an E mother just served us nachos,
Yeah, that's
which
the one after Pluto. I mean, they're probably pretty glad that they made it nine pizzas, which made it a lot easier to reconfigure.
yeah.
And
I wonder how
I
who
know
got to
I was
redecide
looking
the
it up. I
mnemonics.
said NASA used it in an educational film in 1973,
Hmm.
from what I found, but it seems to be older than that.
So how do they pick the new one?
I imagine. I don't think there is a consistent new one. They just.
There isn't.
I mean,
But how do they go about picking
none
it?
of them are that consistent because as long as one of the letters is the same, they can change it a bit. The thing is, like, I always remembered it as being my very extraordinary mother, but most of the ones online seem to say my very eager mother.
Hmm.
So I'm guessing I.
Something with an E,
Yeah.
essentially.
And then he's first talking. Neil deGrasse Tyson brings up how there are five moons bigger than Pluto.
Hmm.
Because we should make our moon a planet first because it's America's moon.
Yeah.
And you were saying that you thought that it was that Neil deGrasse Tyson always probably used to stupid questions, so this works.
Yeah. And he actually tried to give straight answers, which I think is good for Colbert, because it gives Colbert something to play off of.
Yeah,
Um,
and
Colbert is again very mad that Colbert that Neil deGrasse Tyson tries to tell him that Pluto isn't a planet. It's
okay,
kind of why they end the interview, right?
yeah, I think so. And then we get into the tip of the hat wag of the finger. He makes a joke about we don't pass judgment. He says, "Oh, we don't pass up judgment." He makes a lot of jokes about that. I know for his introductory thing.
Mm.
Like I know, I think twice he made the joke, "I don't pass judgment. I roll down my window and flip at the bird." Yeah, the and so
That's funny.
his wag of the finger first is at Lauren Hutton for doing a nude photo shoot at 62,
Mm.
and he
So
praises her for doing it, but
he
then
gives you
says,
a
"What
tip of
were
the
you
tip of
thinking?"
the hat first, and then a wag of the
I
finger.
think so, yeah. And it says we should be. I said, "What's the worst that'll happen?" They say they're like 55 tops.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people vote on ColbertNation.com, and there were polls, but I don't remember the one I saw being about that.
So it's not easy to access currently
I
the
think it might
polls.
be, but I'm not sure. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I think that I said they did a poll section regularly. I
Yeah.
did check the website because it comes up later. And then like the magazines she suggests were Sexy 60s, Mature Honeys, and Extremely Legal.
Yeah.
And then you contrast it with Charlize Theron doing a photo shoot for Under the Cover Entertainment Weekly for her new film at the time, North Country, inspired by the true story of sexual harassment suits in coal mines. They
Yeah.
said made it a bit unfortunate that it seems like Amber Heard played the younger version of her, I guess,
Oh,
uh,
that's not
in the future.
fun. But Colbert does give the Charlize Theron the tip of the hat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it seems like he is arguing that's conflicting message to do a sexy photo shoot for the cover of a movie about
Yeah.
that. But
So how's the movie received?
it seems like it was just okay from what I looked
Just
up.
okay? And it was based on true story?
I think so, yeah. And then he's wagging a finger at Mike Wallace, who was Chris Wallace's father. He was on Fox News for a while, if you remember him.
Okay.
And he was on 60 Minutes from 1960 to 2006, although he
Mm.
still did occasional interviews up until 2008, which is when he died.
So what do you give him a wag for?
For doing an interview on Today for
Mm.
his new book.
Okay. And rather than
Because it was,
CBS,
yeah, because it went on the network. And of course, he points out that Viacom owns both of them now, so,
he has to praise his corporate overlords.
yeah.
And remember, the CBSI is always
Yeah,
watching.
yeah.
That's the main
And
joke.
so then Colbert talks about his book, which becomes another running gag of Stephen Colbert's Alpha Squad 7, which is about
Lady Nocturne and
turn
Tech Jansen
Tech.
Desert.
Yeah, Tech Jansen comes up more again. It's his like sci-fi Gary Stu alter ego type thing.
Okay.
Not alter ego, alter ego. And speaking of which, I don't think we've seen any more of those eagle transitions. Which
Oh, that's sad.
my best guess though is they would kind of get old.
Or do you think maybe they just cut them out of the cut that
Maybe, but
on
I mean, I feel like they
ComedyCentral.com?
would be in there sometime. But
I think they could just be getting rid of the cut.
maybe. Yeah, and so it's called Dreadscape Unleashed is the chapter that he reads from. He
Yeah.
talks about his plasmameter rifle,
Hmm.
which Strenzi, like, on another podcast that I listened to, and part of the reason I started doing this one, 372 pages, will never get back, they decided to read the famous William Shatner's Tech War, and one of the futuristic things that Shatner's ghostwriter likes using is that he just adds plas to the front of a lot of words.
Mm.
I think it stands for plastic in this case, but
Okay.
I kind of wouldn't be surprised if that's what reminded him, because I mean, the idea of like egotistical celebrity make his own sci-fi book kind of
Yeah.
fits that.
Also, Colbert is a big nerd, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if he heard
And
about
also,
that.
the sexy space lady has elvish lips.
Mm.
And
As
I said, here's the
Tolkien joke.
ColbertNation.com Tech Jansen one.
Okay. So, like, this was, again, never actually published as a book, right? The
I don't think
Space
so.
Alpha Squad 7. So what was the actual
It does.
existence of it on the
I'm
website?
not sure. Oh, yeah, it's just one chapter.
It's just one chapter? Is it just the text that's read in the...
No, it's not. This is
It's
a
not?
slightly different text. You can
Okay.
see.
So,
The ethereal harmonies of the laser pipe orchestra echoed off the solid diamond walls of the galactic overlord's pleasure chamber. As I slowly made my way through the gyrating throng of human plasmid and arachnoid revelers, the Arcanite sensors on my integrated detectograph started going haywire, just as I thought. She's here. It was another 200 ticks until I saw her, dancing languidly with a spice runner out of Beetlejuice 7. I'm not sure if I can read this. I mean, maybe it'll violate the copyright or something.
well, that's the first part of it.
Yeah.
It's very...
It's not very much longer, but...
No, it's
And
very...
then it ends with, how many rounds of uranium megasex would it take before she surrendered the alloy?
Yeah. It's funny. Who actually wrote it, do you think?
I'm guessing probably one of the writers. It
One of
does
the
kind of
writers?
remind me of the Eye of Argon type things, although maybe just
Yeah.
that bad sci-fi
Well,
always sounds like
bad
that.
sci-fi and fantasy always sounds bad. It's like...
Yeah.
There are tropes for bad stuff.
Yeah, and the poll for the day this was captured on archive.org says, Halloween's coming up. Got any crazy costume ideas based off of the news of the day? And they're Harriet Myers, a federal indictment, a hurricane, a new video iPod, and high gas prices.
What was the news of the day?
I'm going to guess that the last two might be coming up later because the other
Yeah.
ones have all come up so far in the show. But
Okay, so it'll be one of the future episodes.
I guess. And of course, Colbert says it has a touch of Henry James, and I guess
A touch.
his novels were somewhat erotic, I guess, so maybe that's the joke.
Is that the joke?
And then the final short segment is the Pulse, and this will probably actually be the first of these that is actually interesting because it has something to do with current news.
Yeah.
And he says, like, from up on his podium, you can't hear him too well, so he has to interact with real people. And unlike the previous ones, I'm pretty sure these are real people that he just found in Central Park, because, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like that. The first thing he talks about is the NBA dress code, which was started on October 17th, the day Colbert started his show.
Yeah.
It says, motivated by the malice at the palace, because I guess he was.
Yeah, because, you know.
Yeah. And it says that it was rags for coaches in 2020.
Okay.
When
does the dress code apply? Does it apply outside of games?
I think it does. I know, like I said, see of course, a lot of people have criticized it for seeming kind of racist in the way that.
Yeah.
But I know, like, I did see like one style guide person saying that like it would provide a positive example for having like for forcing athletes to wear fashionable clothes. So
maybe. Well, it was relaxed for
yeah.
coaches, you said.
And it seems like then he talks about the basis weight of 24 pounds of paper. And it seems like this is all real. Like the Canadian softwood subsidies is a real thing.
Yeah.
Because as the Providence accept prices because they own all the lumberland. So we should recycle to spite Canada.
Yep. And he gave a very detailed rant about the Canadian paper too. It was
Yeah.
really,
And then somebody asked him about what his favorite Jay Z song is, so he names 20 Jay Z songs.
and he actually does
And I'm
name
pretty sure they're all real. I mean, it doesn't seem like it'd be
all
that hard to
real
look up.
20. Does he? Does him being Jay Z fan continue?
I doubt it, but
You doubt it?
yeah. And then he says, "But what about Crazy in Love? Well, that was a Beyonce song." And yes, it was indeed actually a Beyonce song, even though Jay Z appeared on it
Yeah.
from 2003. Although they didn't get married until 2008.
Oh, that's funny. I guess did they work together beforehand? Was
I'm
that
not
a
sure.
same
Yeah.
thing? So
I mean, they are
Colbert,
still together at least.
yeah,
And so that's the end of that. I mean, I thought that was a pretty interesting episode.
yep. Colbert is apparently a big Jay Z fan, and
At
other
least one of his writers
at least
is.
one of his writers is. Yeah, also a big fan of paper.
Yeah.
Before The Office came out too.
Funny that I guess he actually put a bunch of research into it.
Yeah.
So signing off.
Signing off.